The phone rang just as I was reviewing the final budget for a small solar installation in Somerville. When I saw Daniel's name on the screen, my chest tightened. I hadn't expected him to call today. I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, Mom," he said. That practiced tone he always used when he wanted to sound polite but firm. "About Thanksgiving. I don't think you're ready to sit with the family this year." I paused, staring at the spreadsheet open on my laptop. "Excuse me, we've got important guests this time. Senators, business partners, and people who've actually made it," he continued, almost rehearsing. "It wouldn't be appropriate." I gripped the edge of my desk. Appropriate. Apparently, years of building a consulting firm, dozens of successful energy projects, and mentoring young engineers weren't enough. My accomplishments didn't count for their carefully curated appearances. "I see," I said, my voice tight but calm. "So I'm not invited." Daniel hesitated, then added, "You'll be welcome another time, when your projects are more established." I hung up before he could continue. My office felt colder, the hum of the computer louder than usual. I sat back in my chair and exhaled slowly. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table that had spent years ignoring me. The feeling of being dismissed, of being measured against a standard I never agreed to, was familiar. Turning back to my laptop, I opened the proposal for a regional energy client I'd been working on for months. If they didn't see me as ready, that was their problem. I would prove my worth where it mattered in the real world. On my own terms, I began typing. Every keystroke a quiet declaration of independence. And I knew tonight would be different from any Thanksgiving before. I closed my email and leaned back, letting the silence of the office settle around me. The sunlight slanted through the blinds, cutting across the desk where project files were stacked in neat piles. Daniel's words lingered, but instead of twisting into frustration, they sharpened into determination. I wasn't going to waste another minute seeking approval that would never come. I pulled up the plans for the Somerville installation and began recalculating energy outputs, adjusting the panel angles for maximum efficiency. Every number I typed, every calculation I checked, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The rejection from my son wasn't the end, it was fuel. I could channel that energy into work that mattered, into projects that would speak louder than any family dinner. Hours passed unnoticed. The office phone went unanswered. Emails waited in the inbox, and for the first time in years, I felt fully in control of my time and choices. Solitude was no longer lonely. It was empowering. Ideas flowed freely without judgment or interruption, and I made decisions on my own authority. By mid-afternoon, I was sketching out a proposal for a new client interested in a multi-site solar plan across suburban Boston. Each site presented unique challenges, and each challenge demanded focus, creativity, and persistence. I lost track of Daniel entirely. His opinions mattered less than the integrity of the work before me. When the sun began to dip behind the skyline, I realized I had completed the preliminary calculations, drafted a detailed cost estimate, and created a presentation outline. The sense of accomplishment was immediate and profound. I had turned a personal slight into action, and the office now felt like a place of opportunity rather than judgment. I saved the files, closed my laptop, and for the first time in years, felt the thrill of moving forward entirely on my own terms, ready to face the challenges that awaited in the next stage of my journey. I remember the long dinners at my parents' house in Louisville, the polished silverware clinking as my siblings' accomplishments were praised and my own ideas dismissed. My older brother, Richard, was already a lawyer, his name printed in the local papers for courtroom victories. My younger sister, Claire, excelled at finance, her early promotions celebrated at every family gathering. And there I sat, doodling solar panel designs in a notebook. My mind filled with equations and concepts they refused to acknowledge. My parents rarely addressed me directly unless to correct, criticize, or compare. Maggie. Why can't you be more like Richard, my father would say, carving his steak with precision, eyes never meeting mine. You'll understand one day, my mother added, nodding at Claire's latest portfolio success. Their words, though casual, shaped a constant undercurrent of doubt, an invisible barrier around me that I could feel pressing at every gathering. It wasn't that I lacked interest in the things they valued. I just valued something else entirely. Renewable energy, sustainability, the idea that science could make life better. These were the things that kept my mind alight while they measured worth in grades, awards, and social status. I learned to retreat, to sit quietly, to nurture ideas in secret, where they couldn't be dismissed. Elias Harrow, my grandfather, was the one who saw beyond the critiques. Retired from decades of engineering work, he would sit with me for hours, guiding my hands over schematics and encouraging questions. You've got something important here. Maggie, he said once, pressing a worn notebook into my hands. The world needs people who see solutions differently. His belief didn't erase the sting from family gatherings, but it planted a seed of confidence I could carry alone. By the time I was 18, the contrast between their expectations and my ambitions had become a daily struggle. I learned to measure my worth not by their praise, but by the integrity of my ideas and the persistence to see them through. That quiet determination would follow me far beyond Louisville, leading me to choices that no one in my family could predict or control. And with that resolve, I turned my attention fully to building the foundation for the work that would define my life. Moving steadily toward independence. After graduation, I made the decision that would define the next chapter of my life. I returned to Boston, determined to build something of my own, something that reflected the vision I had cultivated in countless notebooks and late-night calculations. Horizon Green Solutions was born in a small, rented office above a quiet cafe, its windows overlooking a narrow side street lined with brick buildings and modest shops. The first months were brutal. I juggled freelance consulting, small pilot installations for local businesses, and long hours learning the nuances of permitting, energy compliance, and client management. Every meeting was a negotiation, every project a test of patience and skill. Clients were cautious, skeptical of a woman running a new firm with no corporate pedigree, and many contracts slipped through my fingers. Despite setbacks, the work revealed hidden opportunities. While surveying a series of rooftop installations, I noticed a recurring flaw in conventional solar panels: poor heat dissipation that lowered efficiency over time. Most installers ignored it as a minor inconvenience, but I realized that addressing it could significantly boost output. I spent nights drafting redesigns, calculating angles, materials, and airflow patterns that could correct the problem. It wasn't easy. The prototypes often failed. Wires fried, panels cracked, and I sometimes questioned whether the effort was worth it. But with each failure, I learned more. Each calculation, each adjustment, brought the designs closer to practical, reliable solutions. My vision was no longer just theoretical. It was slowly becoming tangible, something I could offer to clients that no one else had considered. By the end of that year, Horizon Green Solutions had completed 3 small but successful pilot projects, each one demonstrating measurable gains over standard installations. Word spread modestly, and local businesses began to take notice. The tiny office that had once felt like a quiet sanctuary now buzzed with possibility. Charts and prototypes stacked on every available surface. I realized that building a dream wasn't a matter of instant recognition. It was a matter of persistence, attention to detail, and the courage to trust my own judgment, the small victories, the lessons learned from failure, and the problem I had discovered in conventional installations all pointed to a larger opportunity, one that could change the trajectory of my company, and perhaps my life. With that momentum, I began preparing to take Horizon Green Solutions to the next level, seeking the partnerships and resources that would transform a fledgling firm into something far more substantial. I first met Julian Marks at a local renewable energy meetup in Cambridge. He was evaluating a small demonstration panel I had brought, peering at the wiring with an intensity that made me tense. "These connections aren't stable," he said bluntly, tapping a solder joint with his finger. "If you want this to work beyond a single rooftop, you'll need a better design." I bristled, protective of months of work. "I know the prototype isn't perfect," I replied, "but it demonstrates the concept. I'm working on improvements." Julian raised an eyebrow. "Concepts don't power buildings. Results do. If you want someone to take you seriously, we need to fix this before pitching anything to investors." Despite the clash, I recognized his expertise immediately. He wasn't dismissive for show. He had a critical eye honed by years of hands-on experience. Over the next week, we spent long evenings in my small office, untangling wiring, recalculating energy yields, and testing airflow modifications on the panels. Our approaches sometimes conflicted. He prioritized technical precision, while I pushed for efficiency within budget constraints, but gradually, the tension gave way to collaboration. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. Julian suggested an adjustment to the panel's frame that reduced heat buildup by almost 15%. I modified the prototype accordingly, and the results exceeded both of our expectations. It was the first time I felt that the idea I had nurtured in isolation could actually thrive with the right partner. Encouraged, I approached a small regional investor I had met at an energy conference. She was intrigued by our technical improvements and agreed to fund a pilot project for a local commercial building. The installation went smoothly, and the client reported immediate improvements in energy efficiency. It wasn't a national headline, but it was validation. For the first time, I understood that achieving my dream wouldn't be a solo endeavor. With the right allies, even small steps could gain momentum and credibility. Julian and I continued refining designs and building our credibility, setting the stage for opportunities far larger than either of us had imagined. It didn't take long for the whispers and subtle jabs to start again. A call from Daniel arrived one evening while I was reviewing the energy output from our latest pilot project. "Mom, are you sure you're ready to present this at the regional conference?" he asked, voice careful but loaded. "I just want to make sure it reflects well on the family." I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the old pattern of being measured and found wanting. "Daniel, the presentation isn't for our family," I said evenly. "It's for potential clients and partners who care about results, not appearances." He hesitated, then added, "Well, I just think it might be ambitious. Maybe wait until it's fully polished." The subtext was clear: my work wasn't legitimate until he or the rest of the family approved it. Soon after, invitations to local panels and networking events from family contacts came with faintly patronizing notes, suggesting I might want someone from the family to introduce me properly. Every comment, every suggestion was a reminder that my successes existed in the shadow of their expectations, that my achievements could be reinterpreted as inadequate. I closed my laptop and leaned back, thinking about how long I had carried this weight. For years, their approval had been a silent measure of my worth, shaping decisions, affecting confidence, dictating ambition, and yet, here I was, with tangible results, clients who trusted my work, and Julian's partnership solidifying into something reliable and professional. I realized then that family approval was optional. It wasn't a prerequisite for progress, for recognition, or for fulfillment. I had been striving for their validation far longer than necessary. My work, my projects, my ideas, they existed independently of the family's judgment, and that independence was liberating. With that clarity, I turned my attention back to the proposal for a multi-site installation in New England, ready to focus entirely on the work that mattered and the outcomes that truly counted, leaving their doubts behind. Weeks of calculations, revisions, and late nights culminated in a single phone call. The lead contact from a regional energy consortium confirmed the contract $12 million to install energy-efficient solar systems across multiple sites. I sat back, letting the words sink in, feeling the weight of months of work finally translate into recognition. Trade publications picked up the story almost immediately. Headlines praised the efficiency gains, the innovative approach, and the reliability of Horizon Green solutions. Seeing my name printed alongside the project details filled me with a quiet satisfaction. Every failed prototype, every skeptical client, every hour spent alone refining calculations had led to this moment. I glanced at my phone, half expecting a message from Daniel or someone in the family. Perhaps a cautious congratulations. There was nothing. The silence was almost sweeter than any praise they could have offered. My triumph didn't need their acknowledgement. It existed independently, validated by results rather than by familial approval. Julian called a few minutes later, his voice brimming with excitement. "They're impressed," he said. "You did it. This is just the beginning." I smiled, feeling the adrenaline of accomplishment and the pride of seeing our hard work recognized externally. The office felt different that day. The cluttered prototypes and scattered notebooks weren't just evidence of persistence, they were markers of tangible success. The work had finally spoken for itself, louder than any conversation at the family table could. I leaned back, taking a moment to breathe, absorbing the sense of vindication and pride. The path forward was clear: continue building, continue proving the worth of the ideas I had nurtured in solitude, and prepare for the inevitable encounter with family who had once doubted me. With the contract finalized and momentum on our side, the next phase of Horizon Green Solutions began, setting the stage for challenges and confrontations yet to come. The receptionist buzzed and then announced Daniel Lawson. I hadn't expected him so soon, but there he was, stepping into my office with that familiar blend of concern and authority that he always used when he thought he knew better. "Mom," he began, his voice carefully measured. "I saw the news. Congratulations on the contract. I guess, impressive work." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit," I said calmly, keeping my tone even. He hesitated for a moment, then lowered himself into the seat, fidgeting slightly as if the office itself were imposing a subtle judgment. "I wanted to talk to you about the presentation next week," he said, leaning forward. "I just think we should coordinate with the family contacts, make sure everything reflects well on us." On the family, I leaned back, my hands folded over my papers. "Daniel, I don't need the family's approval for this project," I said firmly. "Horizon Green Solutions operates independently. My work speaks for itself, and I don't require validation from anyone at the family table to prove that it has value." His eyes flicked briefly toward the framed trade article on the wall. "I just thought, well, appearances matter," he muttered. I shook my head. "Appearances are irrelevant if the work isn't being done with integrity. You may have been taught to judge success by perception, but I judge mine by results. I've spent decades building this company, refining these designs, and closing contracts through merit, not through influence or approval." He sat back, a flicker of frustration crossing his face. But there was no interruption. I continued. "If you want to be involved, you can contribute as a professional, not as a critic who measures value based on family expectations. That boundary is non-negotiable. The air shifted. He realized that the authority he once held over my choices no longer applied. He nodded, subdued, a recognition of independence dawning in his expression. I returned to my work, confident and unshaken. The confrontation was over, the lines clearly drawn. My autonomy was intact, and the next steps for Horizon Green Solutions were mine to determine, without interference from anyone who had once doubted me. Sitting at my desk late that evening, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The office was quiet, the hum of the computers filling the space as I reviewed the reports from our latest installations. Each figure, each completed project, was proof not just of the company's growth, but of the years I had invested in proving myself on my own terms. The contracts, the client testimonials, the efficiency gains, they all spoke louder than any family approval ever could. I thought back to the calls from Daniel, the subtle doubts, the reminders of expectations I had never agreed to. For decades, I had carried the weight of their judgment, measuring each success against their standards. Now, with Horizon Green Solutions thriving, I understood that those standards were irrelevant. My achievements existed independently, validated by the work itself and the people who relied on it. Julian stopped by with a folder of updated project designs, his expression bright with excitement. The new calculations came out even better than expected. He said. I smiled, feeling the quiet pride of a shared accomplishment. We had built something substantial, and it wasn't just a business. It was a reflection of perseverance, ingenuity, and dedication. I leaned back in my chair and allowed the sense of victory to settle in fully. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't about recognition from anyone who had doubted me. It was about integrity, persistence, and the tangible results of decades of work. For the first time in years, I felt complete satisfaction without needing anyone else's acknowledgement. I had earned this success through effort, resilience, and vision. I closed the reports, knowing the next chapter of Horizon Green Solutions awaited, and that my focus would continue to be on the work, the progress, and the future I was shaping with my own hands. The day we launched the Elias Harrow Innovation Fund felt like the culmination of decades of work, not just mine, but of everyone who had believed in the vision of sustainable energy and innovation. Standing before a small group of young engineers and entrepreneurs, I held the first scholarship check in my hands, a tangible reminder of the mentor who had shaped my path and the lessons I had carried forward. Horizon Green Solutions had grown far beyond the cramped office where Julian and I had spent nights troubleshooting prototypes. We had expanded to multiple sites across New England, with a dedicated team managing installations, client relations, and research. The company's growth was no longer just a measure of financial success. It was proof that persistence, collaboration, and integrity could create meaningful impact. I watched the first recipients of the fund present their projects, each one filled with potential and curiosity, their ideas echoing the same spark I had felt years ago in a quiet office surrounded by sketches and calculations. Seeing them understand that mentorship and opportunity could open doors that family doubt had once closed filled me with a quiet pride that had nothing to do with personal accolades. The journey from those early dinners in Louisville, where my ambitions were dismissed, to this moment, had been long and often lonely. But it had taught me that legacy isn't measured in approval or recognition. It is measured in the influence you leave on the people who follow in your footsteps, the structures you build, and the opportunities you create. As I returned to the office after the ceremony, reviewing plans for new installations and mentoring programs, I understood that the work was far from finished. The future of Horizon Green Solutions and the fund would continue to grow, shaped by every lesson learned, every innovation tested, and every young engineer encouraged to believe in themselves, as I had finally learned to do.